Hello, my amazing developers. I haven't been making these amazing videos because I had other commitments that required my complete time. When I started making these videos, I had a vision of explaining advanced topics in an easy way. I want to continue on that original idea. I want to thank each and every one of you for the amazing comments. Everyone asked to continue the series and also for the source code of the video project. So you can download the project source code from the video description. I'm super excited to be back and have amazing plans for the future series. All right, enough of the talk. Let's continue. In the previous video, we covered Alert View that is responsible for displaying messages. And we also saw Torch View that acts as a light source for the video camera. And we saw how to reset the zoom state, focus, and exposure when switching between different cameras. And we also looked at creating point of reference view that is used when we tap on a certain region for setting the exposure and the focus. In today's video, we will cover updating the code to support iOS 15, some updates to the point of interest view, and add the actual code for recording the videos. And finally, once the recording has stopped, we will play the video. So let's get started. As you're aware, we left the project in the old Xcode. Thus, we need to update the project to support the latest iOS 15. We will start with changing the iOS deployment version to 15. That is the latest that we are supporting. If you have a requirement to support older iOS versions, you can do so, but you might have to handle necessary code updates. After updating the iOS version, let's build the project. And we notice we get some warnings. So let's go ahead and fix these. Xcode is suggesting that we need to change the keyword class into AnyObject. So let's do that. Select the request camera authorization view and double click on the class keyword and let's change it into AnyObject. Same way, we need to do it for the rest of the warnings. Let's build again. Let's expand all the views and update them as needed. We need to update the request authorization microphone. Also the request camera authorization. Also the photo library. Here, Xcode is saying that we need to update our class keyword into AnyObject. For the protocol, we will replace the class keyword with AnyObject. Let's check for further warnings. Head to the warnings, and we notice the SFSymbol arrow.to circle path is deprecated, so we need to replace it to the new type. So click on this warning. This will open up the toggle camera view nib file. Expand it, select the toggle camera button. Here we will be changing our image name into arrow.triangle.to.circle path. Let's build one more time. And after building, we notice the warning for the image name has gone away. Next, we will focus on these warnings for the windows. Click on this warning. Let's hide the properties. We notice we need to update this code. So let's update it now. We will write first scene UI application UIWindow.shared.connected-scenes.first as UIWindow scene, and we will return first scene.windows.first where 0 is key window. Let's delete this line since we don't need it. And also we will be updating the code for the interface orientation. Let first scene UI application shared connected scenes dot first as UI window scene, and for the first scene we will be returning the interface orientation. Let's build one more time, and we notice these warnings have gone away. We can safely use this code since we do not support multiple windows for our camera application. Now that our code has been updated to iOS 15, we can safely click on the recommended settings warning and update the perform changes. And it tells us that there are uncommitted changes for our Git, but it's okay. We will be going ahead and doing this update anyways. Our warnings have gone away and our project settings has been updated to iOS 15. Here you can connect your device to the Xcode and run the application to confirm the warnings have gone away. But we won't be doing that now since we'll be continuing with the video. Now, when we tap on a region, point of interest view is shown to set the exposure and focus, but this creates a problem when we switch between different zoom state. It displays on the top left corner. When we tap and we switch between the zoom state, the lenses, and also the same thing happens when we switch from the back and the front camera. So this is wrong. Also, when we set the exposure and focus, the point of interest view is shown. And when we rotate the device with the device orientation, it displays on the top left corner. So this is wrong. Let's go ahead and fix this now. So in the view controllers, expand the capture and open the capture view controller. And at the end of the private extension, let's create a new method. We are going to create a method that we will name it as hide point of interest view. And we are going to cancel all the work items that we have. For the both half completed work item and the completed work item, we're going to call the cancel method. And also we are going to set these to nil, so they are cleared out. And finally, we can say point of interest view, alpha value is 0, so it is hidden. Let's call our newly created method hide point of interest view in the switch zoom tapped method here. And also we need to call hide point of interest view in the hide views before change, before orientation change. And toggle camera tapped method. We are going to call our method hide point of interest view. Next, we need to add methods to handle the events when the user taps on the record view to start and stop the recording. So let's go ahead and do that. Expand the record view and open the record view Swift file. And let's create a new protocol over here. Protocol record view delegate. And previously we used to call class. We used to set the type class on the protocol But now we need to say AnyObject, and we will be creating two methods over here. Record view start recording, record view of type record view, record view end recording, and also pass in the record view. We will require the delegate object here. We require a delegate of type record view delegate. And in the tab handler method, we will be calling our delegate methods. After the animate for recording, let's go ahead and call the delegate record view start recording. And in the record view, we are going to return self, so the calling class can know which record view state initiated this request. But in our example, we have only one record view. This kind of delegate methods are quite useful if we have multiple views and we don't know which view is reporting which kind of actions. And this is the same principle that Apple follows. Also in the animate for stopped, we are going to say delegate record view end recording, and in the record view, we are going to return ourselves. Next, we have some design changes for the timer view. So let's go ahead and do that. Open up the timer view and open up its nib file. Expand the views. And select the timer label. Expand the properties. Set the text color to white color. And set the font to system bold. And set the font style to bold of size 17. Now for the movie recording, we will be adding the movie file output in our capture session controller and also setting some extra configurations like setting up the high quality preset to get the best audio quality and video quality, and also enable the video stabilization mode. So let's go ahead and do that. Open up the capture session controller. From the controllers, capture session, let's open up capture session controller. Let's hide the properties area. And at the top level of the class, let's declare ourselves a property. We are going to call it private var movie file output of type AVCaptureMovieFileOutput. And in the initialize capture session, we are going to add some extra code. After the capture session, add input, capture device input. Let's add the code. Let movie file output AVCaptureMovieFileOutput guard capture session can add output movie file output else return, and capture session begin configuration, capture a session, add output movie file output. Also in the capture session, set the preset session preset to high. And if let connection is equal to movie file output dot connection with type video, connection is video stabilization supported. Let's add the stabilization mode. Connection dot preferred video stabilization mode to auto. And we can say capture session commit configuration. And finally, we can say self.movieFileOutput is the movie file output. So we are setting the movie file output to the property of the class. So whenever we need to update settings on the capture session, we need to call in the capture session begin configuration, do the necessary changes as we have done here. And once we are done with the configuration, we need to call the commit configuration. When we open up the help menu on the begin configuration method, Xcode tells us we can put in multiple batch operations over here to set all the configuration at once. And it also tells us that no changes are done until we call the commit configuration method, which we are doing so at the end. Next, we will create start recording method in the public area so we can access this outside. We're going to call it function start recording. We are going to say guard let movie file output is of movie file output, else return, to make sure that we don't have, so we are unwrapping the optional. Guard let interface orientation, app setup, interface orientation, else return if we cannot grab the interface orientation. And also guard let video orientation controller, get video orientation for the specified interface orientation, else return. And we need the movie file output connection, movie file output connection with video. We need to set in the video orientation. For the available video codec types from the movie file output, available codec types, if the available video codec types contains HEVC, that is the HEVC video codec, the new one supported by Apple, we are going to set in the movie file output, set output settings, AVVideoCodec key as the key, and the value will be AVVideoCodecType.hevc for movie file output connection. And make sure we pass in our exclamation mark to force unwrap it. So what we are doing over here, we are checking on the movie file output what all video codec types are available to us from the movie file recording. And if it contains the high quality video codec, we are going to set that by setting the movie file output, set output settings. We are going to specify that we are going to update our video codec, and this is the key for that, and this is the value onto the movie file output connection. Now we will be creating a temporary file name for our movie recording. So let's do that. We will say output file name UUID string output file path ns temporary directory as ns string dot appending path component output file name as ns string appending path extension MOV, and let output URL. We are going to create URL over here, file URL with path, and we are going to put in our output file path. And we are going to say movie file output to start recording to the output URL. That is the temporary file location that we have created. And the recording delegate is going to be self. So we will know when the recording has stopped. While we are here, we will be also creating stop recording method. Stop recording. And first we need to check on the movie file output. If we have the movie file output, we are going to say movie file output.stop recording. And we will be also creating a computed property to notify everywhere if the recording is ongoing or not. So we will be creating a computed property. We are going to say is recording, and type is Boolean. Again, I need to grab in the movie file output if it is set. Otherwise, we will be saying return false. And if we get the movie file output, we are going to say if it is recording and return its state only. Before we implement the recording delegate, we need to create the capture session control delegate. So let's do that. Head to the top of the file in the capture session controller, and here create protocol. We will call it capture session controller delegate of type AnyObject, and have in these methods. We are going to say function capture session controller finished recording, and we are going to return the capture session controller, and also what is the movie output file URL. And the second method will be capture session controller failed finishing recording, and also here we are going to return the capture session controller object. This way our calling class can know when the recording was finished successfully or if it was failed while finishing the recording. And where is the output file recorded? Now let's implement the recording delegate. Head to the end of the file and write an extension on the capture session controller and say recording delegate on the AVCaptureFileOutput recording delegate, and implement the method didFinish recording to. And let's start by having a success variable where we by default are assuming the recording completed successfully. And we will be checking on the error returned. If the error is of type NSError, we are going to set the success to the type error.userinfo AVError recording successfully finished key as AnyObject dot bool value. So here what we are doing is we are checking if the error user info has this key already set that the recording failed to finish, and what is the current Boolean value for that. So our success will be overwritten by that value. So meaning if we had an error, the success will be containing false. Now we can check if we have success. We need to notify our delegate. we need to implement the delegate, which I have forgotten. So let's head to the top of the file and have in vCar delegate capture session controller delegate. Once this is set, we can head back down, and in the delegate we need to call in the method delegate.capture finished recording, and in the capture session controller we are going to return self. Let's clean this up a bit. And in the output file URL, we need to specify the output file URL. And if the recording was not successful, we will be calling the delegate capture session failed finishing recording and return the capture session controller ourselves. And if we had an error while finishing the recording, we also need to clean up the file ourselves. We are going to implement this method, but for now, we are going to say cleanup and pass in the output file URL, and let's go ahead and implement this method now. Let's implement it in the public area. Here, we will be saying cleanup, which is expecting an output file URL parameter of type URL. And we need to get the path of the output file URL dot path and guard file manager dot default file exists at the path. Otherwise, we will be returning. So that means if this file is still existing at this given location, we will be continuing. And we will be saying we need to try and delete the file from the location. So file manager dot default dot remove item at path. We need to say the at path, call in the path, pass in the path, sorry, and call in the catch. And here we are just going to write our print statement. Could not remove file at URL, output file URL. Now we are done with the movie recording part. And when the user records the movie using our camera application, we need to display the captured movie in a video player. So let's go ahead and create a subclass to display the video. Head to the view controllers and right click and create new group. I'm going to call it video player. And in the video player subgroup, I'm going to create a new file of type CocoTouch class. And the subclass is of type AVPlayer view controller. Our class name will be called video player view controller. And language, make sure we are checking Swift. Click next and create. And we will be also importing AVKit over here, because the AV player view controller, the parent class, belongs to the AVKit framework. We need to create a protocol here. Video player view controller delegate of type AnyObject. And we're going to write a method that will be notifying if the video player view controller was dismissed. Video player view controller, video player view controller. And we will be implementing the delegate var video player view controller delegate of type video player view controller delegate. And we will be overriding view will disappear, and make sure we always are calling super whenever we are subclassing any method, so the parent class can always get to know what is happening from the child class. And here in the view will disappear, we will be calling our video player view controller delegate, and we are going to say that this was dismissed and pass in self from the self class. This kind of specific protocol method Apple is also using in multiple places. For example, if you are implementing multiple table views on a single view controller, it's up to you. You can do that. So what will happen is if you are confirming to these protocols of the data source and the delegate, Apple always tells you which table view initiated which request and which collection view initiated which request. So this way you can check the compare and do the comparison whether it was the first one, second one, or third one. So we are following the same practices as Apple, and we always are returning the specific object which initiated this request. Now, when the recording has started, we need to stop the auto rotation on the device. So let's do that. In the Capture View controller, let's override in the public area should auto rotate. This tells the iOS whether this view controller should rotate automatically or not. And what we are going to return over here is the current state of the recording has started or not. So if the recording has not started, we can freely rotate. We can freely let the view controller to rotate on its own. But when the recording has started, we will stop the rotation of the view controller. Here, I'm going to say return and not, that is the opposite of the capture session controller is recording. Now we will be writing the code for the recording setup. And while we are here, we will be implementing these new methods. In the private extension of the Capture View controller, let's create these methods. Head to the down area. And we will be saying show timer view. Timer view is hidden. False. And function to hide the timer view, where the timer view is hidden, true. And function to reset our timer, where we are saying timer controller that you reset. And in the function for setup record view, we are going to say record view delegate is self. And in the same view controller, head to the down and head to the end of the file and write an extension on the capture view controller, confirm to the record view delegate, and for the recording start record, and for the record view start recording method, show timer view, set up timer, and we need to call in capture session controller to start recording. And when the recording has been stopped by the user, record view and recording, we need to hide the timer view, reset the timer, and ask the capture session controller to stop the recording. This is why we had exposed these methods as public. So the calling place, which is the capture view controller, can call these methods and start the recording and stop the recording on the capture session controller. And while we are here in the viewDidLoad method, we need to set up the timer view. We need to set up the record view. Let's make this the number one function that we are going to call. And we need to confirm to the capture session controller delegate in the capture view controller. So let's head to the setup capture session controller and say capture session controller delegate is self, and confirm to the protocol for the capture session controller extension on the capture view controller by confirming to the capture session controller delegate. We're going to implement the finish recording and set in movie output file URL to the output file URL, but we need to set the property onto the class. So let's head back onto the top of the file. And here I'm going to have the private var movie output file URL of type URL, which is optional. And while we are here, we are also going to import the AVKit framework. Let's head back down. And here, continue writing our method. We're going to say let player is equal to AVPlayer. That's why we had to import the AVKit, because AVPlayer class is in the AVKit framework. We are going to create the player by specifying the URL of the output file recorded URL from our capture session. And in the video, we are going to create the video player view controller that we created newly created our subclass, video player view controller, and video player view controller dot player is equal to the player that we have created here with the output file URL, and video player view controller's delegate, which we have created ourselves, is going to be self. And we are going to present this view controller in an animated way. Animated is true. And in the completion block, we are going to say player.play. So as soon as the video view controller is displayed on screen, the AV player starts playing. And also we will be implementing the failed finish recording. But here simply we will just print our output, what has happened. So we will say print failed to finish recording. And we will be also confirming to this protocol at the end of the file, extension capture view controller video player view controller delegate, and in the dismissed we are going to get in our movie output file URL, movie file output URL, else return, and capture session controller dot cleanup the movie output URL. So basically what we are doing now, we let the user start the recording, and when the user stops the recording on the camera application, our recorded video is shown as a video player that is presented on screen. And once the user is done with playing the video, when the user dismisses that video player, we are asking the capture session controller that this specific video file that we have done with, please clean it up. So we need to make sure that the cleanup is always at the end of the process. If you are creating a TikTok similar application or an Instagram Reels kind of an application, you need to record the video, do the certain processing, encoding or burning the logo or whatever you want to do. And at the end of the process, then you need to clean up. So you should not clean up way before. Here, when we have the application running, we can tap on a region to set the focus and exposure. And when this point of interest view is shown, we can switch between different cameras, and this will hide our point of interest view. Same thing when we have the point of interest view shown, we can rotate the device and it hides the point of interest view. And also when we start the recording, we have the timer. And when we stop the recording, we get ourselves the video player. And when we dismiss, our cleanup method is called. Same thing happens when we rotate the camera and start recording. And when we stop the recording, video player starts playing. With that, we conclude today's video. If you have liked the video, hit like. That helps to reach other amazing developers like yourself. If you have any suggestions or comments, you can write them down in the comments. I'll be getting back to that. And if you haven't subscribed before, please subscribe so you can get to know when all the latest videos are coming up.